The chapters in this project may evoke feelings of worry and concern that counterterrorism practices stemming from the war on terror are present in our everyday spaces. In fact, it should. As one contributor to the project puts it, we are seeing the war of terror on Muslims and racialized communities through such policies. We are also witnessing how preemptive strategies embedded in counter-extremism measures are being rolled out across society to squash activism on various fronts in the UK. As said in the introduction, rather than view these elements of securitisation as starting during the war on terror, there is a deeper history on how racialised communities have come under attack and subject to surveillance. But the encroachment of counterterrorism policies leave little room for those racialised as Muslims to live as they wish, and are rooted in a racist logic which sees Muslims as needing to be managed through expanding securitisation and surveillance technologies. We can make sense of how such measures terrorise Muslims by connecting it to this definition of racism by the scholar-activist Ruth Wilson Gilmore. She says that racism, specifically, is the state-sanctioned or extra-legal production and exploitation of group-differentiated vulnerabilities to a premature death, in distinct yet densely interconnected political geographies. That phrase, premature death, is one we need to take seriously. We've seen through the various chapters how counter-terrorism and counter-extremism measures are stifling Muslim identities in the workplace, in prisons, and even in the home, where self-surveillance is a common practice to shield against the gaze of the security state. Suggestions that these measures can be improved by strengthening training, including more diversity in these securitizing spaces, will never address the racist logics that underpin these strategies. What has been less explored, and what this project does, is recognise the impacts these strategies have on Muslim practitioners, who are on the one hand expected to implement these policies, but on the other, witness their religious identities and practices morphing into security threats. In the chapters on schools and healthcare, we introduce how Muslim staff feel threatened by the existence of counter-extremism policies in their workplaces. Given how moral panics have shaped the broader discourse on Muslims over terrorism and extremism, these chapters also indicate how proximity to Islam is regarded with suspicion by senior managers who would rather shut down Muslim-related activities than to confront their own prejudice. A common thread appears. Staying silent is used as a protection to avert attention that individuals may be extremists or radicals. Self-surveillance is now rife and is used by Muslims to avoid the gaze of the security state. The only way to overcome and resist these policies is by abolishing them. There is a hesitancy amongst Muslims and other communities who may feel that these practices are already so ingrained in our society that very little can be done. Of course, there's the additional concern that resisting such measures will lead to being branded as an extremist or a terrorist sympathiser. But amplifying the voices of those impacted by such measures is essential if we want to speak back to the violence of the state as orchestrated in several government policies, and crucially, if we want trust to be regained in our everyday spaces. It is impossible for Muslims to coexist in spaces such as schools when their religious identities are stigmatised in government training and policy. Rather than be provoked into silence, this project is designed to encourage those racialised as Muslims to think about their interaction in such spaces and how they have felt stigmatised in such settings.